Welcome to Three Inning Fan, the podcast with me, Kelley Franco. I couldn't be more excited about today's guest because he is a baseball legend. And with his new book, Hurdle-isms, he is evolving way past baseball legend and into guru, at least for me. Clint Hurdle is a former Pennant-winning player, Pennant-winning manager, including being the 2013 Manager of the Year. Clint, thank you so much for joining me today.
Kelley, I am honored and I'm humbled the opportunity to spend some time. It's crazy how our world works, that you and I are actually going to pull this off today, huh?
We're getting it done. And I have one really important question for you, Clint. You have managed 1,269 Major League games. You brought the Rockies to the World Series in 2007, and you were the NL Manager of the Year for the Pirates in 2013, leading them to their first winning season and playoff appearance since 1992. So let me ask you, what's harder, watching another manager manage a game or watching people on Twitter try to manage a game?
First of all, it's an easy answer because I don't get caught up in any kind of dispute on Twitter. Zero. I have a zero tolerance for confrontation. As you know, I'm involved and engaged on Twitter now, and there's things I put out that there's been a lot of positive response. There's some good traction has been built up for everybody. This is just people helping people. Every once in a while, I'll get the person in that'll take a shot across the bow or what have you. And I usually will reply once about, well, I appreciate your take. That's interesting. And I'll usually let it go. And then if they fire something else, I'll just say, hey, good night. And I'm out. So I don't even play wrong. My son told me be light, be bright, and be polite and get off. So that's where I stand on that. But I will let you know, and just because it was brought to my attention, that number you mentioned about games, that's actually number of wins. And I've actually managed over 2,600 games.
Oh my goodness
Isn't it
gracious.
crazy?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So
But this is fun.
what you say about Twitter is true. One thing I've noticed about you is that you are incredibly positive on Twitter. And one time I think I said something a little bit negative. It was in the playoffs last year, and I don't know, someone was pitching that night and I said something like, oh, I don't know, he's probably not going to have a very good game, something a little negative. And you wrote back and you called me a buzzkill. You were like, hey, don't be such a buzzkill. Thanks a lot.
I only do that with friends. And basically it's just like a nudge. Okay, where are you going with this? And because we can all go down that rabbit hole, and you don't think there's 100 times that I haven't wanted on Twitter with the hitting gurus, and then I'll look up the kid and he's 22 and he's got his own platform and program and he's saying there's one way to hit, and I'll just be going like, holy cow, I need to back away. Just don't even respond. Let him be, and just share what you believe in and why you believe in it, and then move on. People choose to follow what they want to follow, and they choose to read what they want to read. So I just am trying to let people know that if you get on my platform, it's going to be of encouragement. It's going to be a positivity. It's going to be, hey, here's things I didn't do well. I failed at. I failed tremendously at. And maybe that lets them know that, you know what, we're all going to fail. It's an event. It's not a person. How you respond to it is really what develops your character.
And so if I can ask what's going on, Clint?
Well, there's a lot going on. First and foremost, I've got a book coming out.
Tell us about the book, Hurdle-isms.
That was one of the interesting things that first came out on Twitter, because I had a couple people respond back to me, how do you dare use the word Hurdle-isms when there's Yogi-isms and there's Casey-isms or Stengel-isms? And I read to the finish. I go, well, actually, I thought I was honoring them by coming up with the isms. And I actually thought it was Stengel-ese when Casey came up with his things. And Yogi, I actually know Yogi's granddaughter, Lindsay, very well. And it's just another way, I think, to bring attention to our words matter. and what we say can matter, and the way we frame it up can have a difference. So the book is number one. It's going to launch February 11th. There's a pre-order opportunity now wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. You and I were talking beforehand, and I tried to come up with all the three names because it's actually gotten some traction. Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, and bookshop.org, along with Amazon. You can all go on those sites and pre-order.
I did. I've got mine on pre-order.
And you're in a very small circle, but you actually got a rough draft too. Don't tell anybody.
I know. Can I get my $20 back?
Well, we'll talk about the refund policy later. We'll see how.
So, yeah, you have a story to be told. And I want to get to the story and how you have come up with all these inspirational quotes. And some of them I kind of find myself repeating, and I like it. But it's also kind of funny because once in a while I'll wake up a little grumpy, and then I'll open Twitter, and there's Clint with all his, happy, positive things. I'll be like, "Oh, come on, I'm not ready for that. Can you just let me have a cup of coffee first?"
Well, I agree with you. It's an acquired taste. My wife will tell anybody I'm an acquired taste. And so what I suggest, because I've had a number of people like you, Clint, really already and I'm going, yeah, I am. Because one of the first things I do is I spend my time in the morning once I get out of bed. And, I remind most of my friends, myself included, that if the first thing I touch is my phone when I get out of bed, I'm a loser. Because there's somebody laying next to me in that bed that I need to give a hug, a kiss, or something. And there needs to be then a separation if I go into my office for some quiet time. I do a daily devotional, and I spend some time just in solitude. And then I'll make the transition for the things I'm going to send out that day. And people say, really? Are you? No, am I positive all the time? I have moments of doubt. I have moments of anxiety. I have times of frustration. I have times of disappointment. Those are all real. Those emotions are going to come. They're going to land. How much time I give them to land, and whether I let them set up shop, then whether I let them own my morning or own my afternoon, that's up to me. Those are decisions that I get to make throughout the day. And what I've learned from my experiences is whatever comes to mind, feel it, touch it. Is anything good going to come from me holding on to it? And then I make my next decision. So if you need your cup of coffee first, Kelley, I'm with you. Have your cup of coffee first and then go on, because I don't want to get in the way of a woman without her coffee. All right.
So many of us say, gee, I really ought to write a book, but very few of us actually do. And you had a story to be told, and you also kind of had the mojo to go tell it. So what inspired this?
Well, it wasn't just me saying, I'm going to go get all this done. And I think that's one of the points I continually try and share with others. There's a lot of fingerprints on success. And for me, most of the fingerprints on my failures were these right here, mine. But on success, there's been people that have touched me along the way. And truthfully, about halfway through my career in Pittsburgh, after we had the 3-year run of success, 13 through 15, I had people that had been in my life for a period of time, and a few authors that I've stayed with. I would bring authors into camp in Colorado, out in Arizona. I brought authors into camp in Bradenton that would share their stories, positivity, different guys, Todd Gongworth, John Gordon, Billy Treasure, friends of mine. But a lot of them had reached out to me and said, hey, Clint, have you ever think about writing a book? And I was like, well, no. But now that they kept mentioning, I did. And then one of them mentioned, one of the things most athletes like to do is co-author a book. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. Basically, you want the cliff notes. The other guy does all the other man or woman does all the work. You talk, and through either, a phone conversation, a Zoom call, and what actually the man and I, Dave Burchett, that sat down and attempted the first book that we were going to do together, we just spent time together. We also met and he journaled the notes. I would journal and then send him my thoughts. So we put 2.5 years into this because we were going to co-author a book, which meant, again, he did all the hard work. Well, in trying to get this book published, nobody had any interest of 2 over 60 white males having a conversation. One of them actually dropped the male, stale, and pale comment on us.
Never heard that before, truthfully,
Well,
but
I
okay.
never heard it before either. And then I started hearing it all the time. It's kind of like buying a green car and then everybody's got a green car. Um, and it was kind of, at first it was like, hey, okay, no big deal. And it was like, well, hey, wait a minute. Why is everybody saying no? And then it was like, okay, now I'm angry. And, but Dave and I just get, okay, we just need one. We just need to find one. We couldn't find one. And then Dave, in his earnestness, asked me to reach out to John Gordon, good friend of mine, 17 bestsellers. And John said, Clint, as far as the packaging, I don't think will work in today's society for what they're looking for. You're basically speaking to one demographic. I know you don't mean to, because we sent this book out to a lot of different people to read, a lot of favorable results. But he says when people see the names and then do the little backdrop, it's two old white guys. So he said, I've known you 10 years. And what I think you ought to do next is write your own book. I was like, I was trying to use my skills to no, because. And he goes, stop. Him and I and a bunch of other people in this world pick a word every year for that word to mean something. One word it's called. And he goes, in 2023, you pick the word grow. Are you afraid to grow? What's your fear of writing a book? Of course, I'm like, I'm not afraid. He goes, then why did you not say yes? And he goes, is it the fear of failure? Is it the fear of what other people think? He dropped about 6 fears on me. And you know what? All of them were true. But basically, they were only true if I let them be true. And he says, I've got some Hurdle-isms, first time I heard the term, that I've jotted down since we've known each other, that I think that's your avenue. You ought to write a book on Hurdle-isms and share your experience, strength, and hopes, lessons learned the hard way, failures, successes, and wrap it around that. And then see where it goes. That was where the embryonic thought came from. So I had to share with Dave that we were going to go this avenue, and that was hard.
Well, I'm sure that was when you did your pivot, as is a word we all use now. But it is incredible that your book is, in a sense, about perseverance and motivation and positivity. And also, your process in writing the book was a bit about perseverance, too, because you got rejected and you had to think of another way to make it work.
I did. And again, a good friend who, a lot of people, we use the term speak truth to power. And a lot of conversations can be had with people in management, with people that are in leadership, that the conversation never just comes down to a street level where it's Clint and Kelley. It's Kelley, the producer of a podcast and host, versus Clint, a special assistant to the general manager of the Colorado Rockies, where there's kind of bridges already in the way, where you strip the bridges. John told me what he thought because he loved me and he wanted me to hear it, and what I do with it's up to me. So then the thought became, okay. And I met with a publisher, Wiley Publisher, his publisher. And he said, I'm not going to pull any more strings for you. I'll get you the meeting. After that, it was a few interviews. I sat down with some very smart and fun people from Wiley, and they go, you know what? Let's do this. We want to do it. This format is what we believe will work. And we turned it into baseball seasons. We turned it into the Hurdle-ism concept, 25 of them over time. And here's the fun part and the hardest part. Now I'm an employee again. Deadlines to meet, fact check, spell check, check, and then meet deadlines. And there's word count and all these other things. And I was so blessed. I had like 2-3 different editors that I worked through that had different responsibilities. And they were also gracious and also helpful because I'm a first-time author.
Right.
I don't know what I don't know. And there's a lot. They walk me through it. Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, reframe this. Hey, I like the way that came out. How about more of that? It was basically a red light, green light, yellow light. Red light, now stop doing that. Yellow light, okay, proceed with caution. I like where you're headed. Tighten it up, frame it up a little better. And then the green light was Clint. I love that. It sounds like you. Keep doing that. And the deadline thing was a big deal because at the end of the day, it was 2 female editors that I worked with mostly, both the ones that I've never had a first-time author meet all the deadlines.
All
And
right.
I've never, well,
Overachiever.
well, I believe, I believe in following orders. I believe there's chain of command. And they made a deal with me, an agreement, and I needed to uphold my side of the agreement. and I need to prioritize my time. And fortunately, I fly to most places I go since I live on the west coast of Florida. So I have a lot of available plane time in which to use wisely. And we did, and we met the deadlines, we met the word count, and then we're up and running, and the printing and the reference, the index and the introduction. I wrote every word in this book I wrote, which is something I never thought that would ever come out of my mouth.
That's incredible. And so you have this story to tell, and it's told through the lens of these hurdle-isms that you have in the book. And if I can, I'd like to hop in the time machine and just go back a little bit. And I think exactly what year I'm going back to, 1978, and the cover of Sports Illustrated. You were on the cover, only you. It wasn't like a team photo. It was Clint Hurdle. And the title was This Year's Phenom. And the article went on to describe you as tall, dark, handsome, and brash, and able to hit a baseball 9 miles. What was that like, Clint? I mean, you're 20 years old, you're an MLB player, you're on the cover of the most famous American sports magazine. Was it fun? Was it scary? Was it a pressure cooker? What did that do to 20-year-old Clint?
It really never became fun, other than the first time that maybe in a quiet space I could look at it and say, oh my gosh, I'm on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Because at that time, there was only 3 magazines in a 7-Eleven. It didn't have a magazine rec. It had Time, Newsweek, and Sports Illustrated. And the short story of the first time I saw the magazine cover, I've shared it on X, but I walk into my local spot to get my orange juice and my honey bun.
Breakfast of Champions.
Absolutely, which later on in years may or may not have turned into, a Bud Light and a Twinkie. I don't know. But I got my regular order. I brought it up to the counter. A guy probably my age, 20, 21, working the counter. We look each other in the eye, and then you can tell something. He's got a quizzical look on his face. He's like, and then he looks down on the counter, and he looks back at me. So I look down at the counter, and I see the magazine with my picture on. I look back at him. He looks back at me. We both look down at the counter. We look at each other again. I walk out of the store without my honey bun, without my orange juice. And all of a sudden, I'm going to guess it was 1/3 fear, 1/3 holy, and 1/3, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And this was back in the day when there was no rookie training class. There was no social media awareness. I had people that tried to help me along the way. Don't get me wrong. I've owned every mistake I've ever made, and I will continue to. But immediately I felt like, holy cow. And then once I read the article, it was double holy cow. It was like, oh my gosh, because Larry Keith, who wrote the article, was a tremendous guy, good man. Point on. Everything I said. And he framed it up the way it should have been framed up. The man that took the picture, Heinz Kumeter, I'm butchering his last name, just passed.
I saw that.
And what a guy.
It was quite a picture, too.
What a guy. But the lessons learned from those two in this process were things I appreciated later. Larry actually mentions I'm the only person that ever wrote him a thank you note after having an article that turned into a front page story. So that was kind of cool. But it was just a lot. And when I got to the clubhouse, obviously there's men that have played 10, 12 years in the league and never been on the cover of any magazine. So you got that to work through. You got the buzz throughout spring training. Oh, here's the cover boy. It turned into cover girl. It turned a lot of other things. It turned into a thing, and just tried to navigate and manage it the best I could. And a lot of life lessons have come from that.
So there came a time when things went sideways, and you've tweeted about it over and over, and it's in Hurdle-isms. And so I hope I can just kind of say it here because you've said it. You struggled with alcohol. You were traded 3 times. You got 2 DUIs, and you were divorced twice. And so then I remember saying you bartended during the 81 strike too. So a few things were happening, and I'm just kind of wondering when the struggle started. Did it start with the SI cover? Did it start with the bartending, or was it just in there and it had to come out sooner or later?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was one thing. I said it was a combination of things. Number one, the heightened awareness of maybe what was expected of me, the expectations that I felt other people had for me, which really isn't fair to anybody else. But that was part of it. There came a point in time in my rookie year, I actually made a comment. I said, right now, if I gave $100,000 to cancer, won the MVP, and married Marie Osmond, it still wouldn't be enough for some people. It seemed like if I got a couple hits, somebody would say, well, yeah, the third at bat with the bases loaded, you rolled over, ground into a double play. Or that was my perception. It just was a struggle. I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted to make everybody happy. It was a lot of that, self-inflicted. And then I think the walking away from so many games, because you're at the highest stage. There's no better players in the world. And you're 20 years old when you break in. And then when it wouldn't work out the way it usually always worked out in the minor leagues or in high school or anywhere else I played, I didn't have many bad games. I had a lot of good games. Where in the major leagues, the bad games were showing up with much more regularity or less than games. And then it turned into drinking. I never drank in high school. I really didn't drink once I was able to drink. But as failure, in my eyes, took its own ownership of me in some areas, I would say, well, that was the game. I'm going to find a way to numb my feelings or just feel a little bit better or take away the sting. One thing turned into another, and then I rationalized it. Well, down the road, I play at Busch Stadium. I mean, I work at Coors Field. If you win a game, you have a few beers. If you lose a game, you probably have a few more beers. And if you get rained out, you have a bunch of beers. So I actually drank my way into alcoholism. My mom, my dad, best parents in the world, two best sisters in the world. I got married 2 times to women I loved absolutely both times when I married them. I don't think I held up my end of the bargain in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. And I just got to the point where my life became unmanageable in a number of different areas because of my alcoholism.
So, what I'm trying to wrap my hands around is that with Hurdle-isms and with your presence on social media, you are essentially taking your life's most humbling moments and you're admitting them out there for all of us to see. And most of us, myself included, take these moments and we try to sweep them under the rug. We try to bury them. And to do what you're doing takes a tremendous amount of courage. And where'd you get the courage and why not just bury this stuff like the rest of us?
Well, burying stuff is what got me to become an alcoholic. We're all wired different. I think you're the kind of person that can enjoy a glass of wine. You know when to stop drinking. My wife, Carla, says it best. She goes, I finally started enjoying drinking when you stopped. Because once I picked up and she was with me, she knew how it was going to end. I didn't drink every day. Every time I got drunk, every time I drank, I got drunk.
Mhm.
And I learned a lot about myself through counseling, AA counseling. I've learned a lot about myself in AA rooms, listened to other people that have had similar but different stories, but a lot of common fabric involved. So for me, it's become therapeutic. I'm not bragging. I'm not boasting. There's collateral damage that I've caused along the way. And there may be somebody out there that's walking through it right now and is continuing to pack it down and to bury it. And I'm just telling you, I don't know. Maybe it was going to work for you. Maybe it's going to end up with a better story. It didn't work for me. And the story got worse the more I stuffed down inside of me because eventually it had to all come out. And it's not a highlight reel, you know? However, from the time I made the decision to get sober, because I was forced to, again, I still don't know what's best for me sometimes. I had to start with court-appointed alcohol counseling, community service, all the things that you get when the DUIs are landed. And I recommitted my life to Christ. I can't tell you, those two, I had another 18 things I thought I needed to improve upon. When I made those 2 decisions and just focused on those 26 years ago, I could not have written the life story that I've lived in the last 25 years. From where I was to the road I was able to travel, the journey that I went on, the people that blessed me along the way, and opportunities and successes, and to remarry a 3rd time and to hopefully now getting it right, to have 2 children, to be raising a 38-year-old daughter who we love each other more than anything now that we were in a hard place for a while. It works for me. It just works for me to lay it out there. I'm not better than. But what I've learned over time, Kelley, I'm not less than either. Popeye said it best. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. So I'm just trying to share along the way for somebody out there that could be scuffling or feels like they're alone or stuck, or they're just beating themselves up, because that's what I used to do. I used to just beat myself up. And then how healthy is that after a while?
You mentioned in one of our prior conversations that the work of the author Brene Brown had resonated with you. Can you tell us a little bit about her? And I got to say, I actually looked up one of her TED Talks, and I was thinking it was going to be like some touchy-feely stuff. But she is actually, first of all, hilarious. And second of all, she's kind of edgy.
And I think there's probably some people, if you ask them to describe me, they might say he's funny and he's edgy.
I can see
There's
that.
nothing I won't talk about. You can bring anything to the table, and I'm not going to deflect it. I'll give you my thoughts on it. She was like, she took a peek behind my curtain. She took an x-ray of me, and every book that she wrote, that book for me. 2 million other people might have read it as well, but she wrote it for me. And it just kept happening. And that's one of the things I said, what has been crazy in my life. And I've met a handful of men that have cut me up in a good way, have broken me in a good way, have built me up in a good way. And I talk about a few of them in the book, but I have met just as many women that have found a way to connect with me or meet me right where I'm at and help me, or I've learned from by reading them or following them. And she's one of them, man. Edgy, yes. Cut you to the core, yes. And she's beaten addiction in a number of different areas in her life. And her husband is kind of the role Carla played. Her husband is her, wingman. He's the one that prods, pokes, nudges, speaks truth to, and settles and calibrates and balances. And that's what Carla's done in my life. But I mean, one of the things that I was attracted to when I started reading your stuff, listening to your podcast, all right, she's edgy. She's got content. She knows what she's talking about. And she pays attention. Those attributes right there are attractive, whether you're male, female, or whatever. And she was attracted to me that way. There's a small group of women reporters out there in the game today that I still follow, and they'll tell you I'm their uncle. Danny Wexelman, Melanie Newman, Jessica Kleinschmidt. I'm going to say Kelsey Lynch, and used to be in Colorado, but we stay close and connected just because for so many years, I didn't give women enough credit. And I've learned over time that, man, all the intelligence and all the information and all the wisdom I walked past because of me, wow, I'm not going to miss those opportunities again.
Never too late. Look at you nailing it at, I won't say how old you are, but I did find out.
I'm 67.
67.
Yeah.
So Hurdle-isms, it's good. Now I did pre-ordered mine on Amazon, as all of our listeners should do, but you were kind enough to send me a little sneak peek so I could look at it before today. And it's inspirational. I mean, one particular part that resonated with me was when you talked about how your son Christian told you how to have a white belt mentality. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure it had been talked about before, and actually it has been referenced in some of my locker room meetings with mental skills coaches about a tremendous judo champion many, many years ago. But Christian retired from baseball at the age of 4, which just drips with irony. And I believe I share this in my book that God put 3 children in my life to stretch me and grow me in ways I never would have if left to my own accord. Ashley's done that to me. Christian's done that to me. And our daughter Madison, who was born with a birth defect, has done that to me as well. But Christian, retired from baseball at the age of 4 when your dad's actively managing a major league club. And then we go to another place where baseball's even like bigger in Pittsburgh. And then saying, Dad, I'm not wearing the pirate gear to school because I wore it one day and they all wanted to beat me up. But he chose karate, and then he chose tennis, which is I share with my baseball buddies or any of my buddies. I'll say, you know what? He neutered me as a parent. They'll be like, well, what do you mean? I go, he picked two sports. I can't overcoach my son. I don't know enough about the sport, which all of us do, right? We all overcoach our kids. Rumor has it. And I said, the worst one is I can't second guess the coach because I don't know enough about the sport, in which most of us do. And then he picked crew, right? So the three sports are lining up: karate, tennis, crew. The karate thing, he's into it, he's doing it, and it comes time, he says, Dad, I need some money. We're going to buy we got to get my uniform. I go, do they call it a uni? Because I kind of know a little bit about it. He goes, oh, no, it's my Obi. I got to get my Obi. So, yeah, awesome. Here's the money. He comes back. I go, you got it? It's all bundled up. He goes, yeah. I go upstairs, put it on. He puts it on. He comes down. I said, show me some moves. So he started. And there's no rope, there's no belt. It's flying open. I'm like, hey, you're looking like Kung Fu Panda here a little bit. Slow down. Like, we got to get the belt on you because your robe's wide open. He goes, oh yeah, whoa, wait. So he goes, gets his belt, and he comes back and he goes, like, see what kind of belt I got? I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, dude, it's the white belt. You don't know anything. It's like it's the beginner's belt. It's bottom.
Yeah.
He looked at me with a just twinkle in his eye, says, Dad, it's the best belt there is. He said, the white belt means I know nothing and I get to learn everything.
Love it.
I gave him a hug, a tear strolled down my eye. I wrote a note. I took this back to our mental skills coaches in Pittsburgh and I go, white belt mentality. And one of the guys said, well, yeah, it's out there, but we haven't referenced it. We haven't made it a thing. We made it a thing within the Pirates organization. Bernie Holiday, our mental skills coach, he was the one that already had some history on, but it became real. And I share it all the time now because I'm 67 and I'm still learning from others. This whole social media thing just started, I'm guessing 18 months ago. I'm thinking a little over a year, writing a book that was never on my itinerary. Playing bingo once a week in the family. Not that I learn a lot at bingo, but I do learn how much joy it brings other people, and my daughter specifically, and my wife. But yeah, I'm just out to learn. I want to grow. I want to share in the successes and the joys of others. Because some days, you know what? There's no highlight reel film today for me from anything I'm doing. So maybe Carla has a big up that day, or maybe Maddie or Christian or one of my friends. Celebrate their success like it's your own. That's called mudita, a Buddhist term. It's in the book, but that was my word for 2024, to celebrate the success of others. But that white belt mentality is so meaningful to me today, and so meaningful that it usually comes up in most of the podcasts that I share with most people. Give me something that you're really kind of focusing on. It's to be a lifelong learner.
Love it. And it's so true that you're never too old to learn new things. I mean, I just find myself every day learning new stuff, sometimes even when you don't want to.
Sometimes those are the best times.
So tell us a little bit, if you can, about the future, because I'm kind of wondering if you have any thoughts about managing again.
Well, that's funny when people always ask you that. Like I said, I can have all the thoughts in the world, but until somebody calls and asks me if I want to manage it, that's what they are. So I don't get caught up in that. I made a statement in 2019. I'd interviewed for a job. The Padres offered me a job, a 2-year job as hitting coach after the year after I got fired. And I went home to Carla back before I landed. A contract came by email. So obviously the interview went well. And I shared with Carla when we got home around midnight. I said, okay, it's this. She's like, okay, so spring training's in Arizona. We'd been spring training in Florida on the beach. I go, yeah. She goes, well, we've done it before. The kids are in school. I think I can figure it out. Okay. The next one. Well, I think I can figure it out. And she goes, San Diego, is there any place further west you could go? And I'm like, no, Hawaii, but they don't have a team. So no, that's as far west I go. She goes, I love San Diego, but the kids, Maddie's got some different challenges with a special needs child and moving your kids around for spring training, because we always like. She goes, I'll figure it out. Kelley, I'll figure it out. So I said, you know what, Clint, you maybe want to take a walk tomorrow, and maybe you need to figure it out. So I did, and I just shared with her, said, honey, I'm going to put the uniform in the closet, and I'm going to sign a lifetime contract with a home team. Now that sounded cute and it sounds romantic. I haven't done that. I failed at retirement. But my point being, I think when you say that, some people probably say, well, he's done. But I've been around, I've been out. I think it would take an act of God, number one, because it'd have to be a unique situation where I fit them and they fit me as far as mindset, what we honor, what we value. Because I have had some conversations with other people that in some areas the managerial landscape has changed from the managerial landscape I was blessed to be involved 17 years, where when the game started, I managed the game. And we had a lot of different interaction before the game and after the game. But Neil Huntington would always tell me, the day I can't trust your instincts in the game, during the game, while the game's going on, is the day we need to make a change. And I trust you. At the time, it was like 45 years of experience. I was blessed with Dan O'Dowd and Neil Huntington as general manager. So I've learned, do I think I could do it? I do believe I have one major push left in me in the right place. And that's just because I don't want to get back in uniform and be significant. And I want to honor it the right way. I don't wear the uniform now because I think it's actually an easier sell for the players that I work with when I don't show up in uniform.
Uh-huh.
When I just show up in Clinton khakis and a Hawaiian shirt, or a golf shirt. And there's no title really. So that's where I'm at. And if it happens, I'm happily employed with the Rockies. 3 years past, this will be my 4th year as a special assistant to GM. The majority of my work is done in player development and with our scouts. And that has been very rewarding and fulfilling. We haven't performed at the major league level like any of us want to. That's the next major challenge. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, maybe there could be some exciting times ahead. And because I am very lucky to have you as a faithful listener and watcher to my podcast, you know what comes next, which is my closer to my podcast is always what's good to eat while watching the ball game. And Clint, you are my guest today. So what is your favorite thing to eat while you're watching the ball game? It could be in the ballpark. It could be when you're home on the couch with Carla, hunkering down to watch a game. What is your favorite?
In the words of Humphrey Bogart, a hot dog at a ballpark is better than a steak at the Ritz. I eat my hot dog with mustard and onions. I eat it at the ballpark when I go watch a game. I eat it at home when I watch a game. And then I crack peanuts and throw the shells on the ground. Even
At home?
not so much when I'm at home.
Okay, that's good. Glad to hear
if
that.
I'm by myself, and then maybe I try and clean them up after. I'm not a huge eater, when the game's going on
Okay.
anymore. When I watch a game, I just watch the game. I don't dissect the game, but that's hot dog, mustard, onions, a New York dog basically is what it's called. And then I love the peanuts.
Yeah, I love the peanuts too. That is a great thing about peanuts at the ballpark is throwing the shells on the ground. And when I was in London last year for the London series, I was trying to explain to the Brits that it's actually what you're supposed to do, but they're all very polite there and they couldn't wrap their hands around it. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Clint. That was just great. And we're all going to go and pre-order that Hurdle-isms. And I would like to say thank you to this year's phenom, Clint Hurdle.
Kelley, this has been a pleasure. And for your listeners, they'll follow this lady. She knows what she's doing. We have to spend some time at the winter meetings, and I got to know her much better. And give her a shot, give her a follow, but also just stay up with her because bigger things are coming down the road for Kelley Franco. I guarantee you that. I can't wait to watch your journey.
You're too kind, Clint. Thank you for being here. And thank you to all our listeners. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.